How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna take a look at an interesting murder case that, even to this day, is still unsolved. Our story starts off with a man by the name of Alfred Rouse. Born in 1894 in London, Rouse grew up just like any other kid. He actually stood out amongst the other kids. He was smart, he was athletic, and he took interest in a bunch of different hobbies. At age 14, Rouse was already working at a textile manufacturing company and trained to become a carpenter. He also loved to sing and play instruments and took additional classes at night to further his education. By the time World War I started in 1914, Rouse joined the British Army. He participated in a battle in 1915 where he would suffer some severe damage to his body. An enemy soldier fired an explosive shell towards Rouse, and he got caught in the explosion, suffering injuries to his head and legs. Alright, let's fast forward a bit to 1920. Rouse started to work a bunch of different jobs, mainly involving vehicles. He became a good mechanic. But he was also very promiscuous. His sex drive was through the roof, which led to many affairs with many different women, and he was married at the time too. His job as a mechanic required him to travel around the country, and he ended up impregnating 3 or 4 women, as he had a couple of illegitimate children in the following years. Of course, this took a big hit on his finances, as child support costs a ton of money, and it was a huge burden on Rouse's entire life. So, one day, he came up with a plan to fake his own death. He hated his current life situation and wanted to start over with a clean slate, without any debts or the child support bills and all that stuff. On November 5th, 1930, Rouse would go on with this plan. He bludgeoned a random person on the head and burned his unconscious body in a car. A few hours later, 2 guys discovered the burning car and called the police. It was discovered that the mallet that Rouse used to knock out the victim was still inside the car, and the license plate on it was barely even damaged, so the police quickly found out that the car belonged to Alfred Rouse. Unfortunately for him, his plan was just very messy. Investigators found that the feeding pipe near the petrol tank in the car was loosened, probably on purpose by someone else. So they came to the conclusion that this was a planned murder, and it was someone other than Rouse who got killed in the blazing car. So this whole fake death thing instantly failed. The police knew what was going on, and they eventually captured and arrested Rouse and charged him with the murder of the unknown victim in the car. He would get convicted of the crime and then executed on March 10th, 1931. Now, as for the victim, his body was destroyed in the car, so it was hard to find out anything about him. DNA testing was not as sophisticated back then, but forensics grabbed a couple of DNA samples from the burned body, hoping that maybe in the future they'd be able to find out who the victim was. The most popular assumption around that time was that the victim was a man by the name of William Briggs. Briggs was a 23-year-old guy who went missing around the same time the burning car was discovered. But there was no progress made on the investigation, and no real evidence was found that suggested Briggs was the guy who got murdered by Rouse. It wasn't until 2014, over 80 years later, that the Briggs family decided to give it another shot. The family pushed for the case to be reopened, and they wanted closure on the whole situation. What happened to William Briggs, and was he really the victim in that burning car murder? Samantha Hall, the great-great-niece of William Briggs, contacted the police, hoping that they can finally do some DNA profiling to put this case to rest. Samantha said that the stories of William Briggs' death were passed down through the generations. According to the details of the story, Briggs was last seen walking out of the house on November 5th, 1930, dressed in a plum suit and turned to wave to his mom goodbye from the doorstep. But that was the last time anybody saw him. He was never seen again. The family wanted answers. They wanted some closure to find out if Briggs was indeed the victim. Fortunately for them, the 80-year-old DNA samples gathered at the crime scene back in 1930 were undamaged, so the scientists were able to go through with the testing. But unfortunately, they found out that the DNA extracted from Briggs did not match with anyone in the Briggs family. They compared it to the samples from his relatives who were still alive, and nothing matched. So, in conclusion, we now have 2 mysteries that are still unsolved after the burning car murder. 1. who was the real victim from Rouse's murder attempts? And 2. What on earth happened to William Briggs? Both of these questions are still unsolved up until today, and the more time that passes, the less likely this whole case would get solved. So it's not looking too good. I guess the bright side to all this is the current Briggs family found out that William did not get brutally killed by Rouse. But now there's not a single hint of what could have happened to him. He's still reported to be missing from the time he left his parents' house all the way back then. On the other hand, there's still no information at all about the unknown guy killed in the car. Nobody else came out with any evidence or claimed that that guy could have been a family member or a friend or someone. I mean, if something like this happened today, it would be a lot easier to find out, but back then, there were not many ways to track where people were. But that's just how it was. That sums up the story of the mysterious burning car murder case, one of the strangest unsolved mysteries ever. I hope you enjoyed that video, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.